Hey yo guys, what's up and welcome back to Two Toe Tags and Metal Reviews, and today we're going to have an album review of Pro Christu by Rotting Christ. So here we are. It's been a week later. 1 week later. We reacted to a bunch of songs from this album.
Yeah, 3.
We were worried about the album, right? We were a bit worried about it. From the singles that came out, we were kind of like, we're not sure where this is going. I'm not sure how we feel about this. This is kind of...
The last one gave me some hope.
The last one gave some hope, which was that Sersha? I think the last one we actually reacted to.
The Apostate.
The Apostate, okay. Yeah, but we were kind of like, not too sure.
Yeah.
And I just got to say that overall, listening to this album throughout the week, my feelings are kind of the same. Where I'm kind of like, overall more disappointed than not. And it sucks to say that. I don't like saying that. I like this band. This band has put out some awesome stuff, some awesome content in the past that I really, really vibe with. And I just really wanted this album to click like that old stuff did. But for me, it didn't. And I found myself pretty bored of the album most of the time. I felt like most of the songs ride this mid-tempo kind of, wave. It doesn't really fluctuate too much from that. And I feel like there's a lot of ideas on here that are kind of repeated from other songs and albums. And I guess that's okay to an extent, but they just don't seem to go anywhere. So an example of this for me is The Apostate, which I guess you might have a different opinion. This is a song that has some of those classic Rotting Christ elements that I like, but the song just doesn't go anywhere with it. I feel like it just sticks with this one little thing and just plays it out for however long it is, 5 minutes or whatever. I also think vocally, this song specifically, but not only this song, the rest of the album as well, vocally, the album's kind of bland. And if you listen to other Rotting Christ, you hear a lot more distinguished things in the vocals, more screams, more different type of just visceral things that just give more character and punch to the music.
This one has a lot of talking.
This one has a lot of talking, and it's a lot of just almost like monotone, just straightforward reading from a script kind of thing. And it just was not that enjoyable. So most of these songs for me literally just came and went every single time. Even if I put a song on like Father Like Son, for example, I heard some people saying that the lyrics in that song are nice and meaningful and all that stuff. So I was like, you know what? Let's give that song a listen, put some focus on it, and really try to get something positive to say about it. Couldn't do it. I find it drags on and it just doesn't go anywhere. And I'm gonna probably say that again and again because that's kind of my overall thoughts about this album and a lot of these songs. Now there was a couple things that I did like. I didn't think the whole album was terrible by any means, but there's a couple songs that were okay, like La Ladra del Diavolo, track number 5. I think I mentioned this last week. It starts with some really cool drum rolls. I always liked that when it came on. And then it has some woman singing in the background during some certain parts. And it almost feels like out of place in a way, but I kind of like it. Like when I first heard it, I think you actually brought it up to me and you're like, hey, is there another vocalist there? So I went and listened and I was like, oh yeah, there is. And it felt out of place. Like it didn't feel like it was properly done, but the more I listened to it, the more I kind of was like, actually, that's really good. That's really tastefully done. It's kind of a unique way that they kind of incorporated those two vocals on top of each other like that. So I thought that was cool, but it rubbed me the wrong way at first. The song that actually I think is the best song on the album is Pixlox Docs, which is track number 7. This one I just think has the best riffs. It's one of the more angry sounding songs on the album, but it still has that mid-tempo type of vibe that I was bored of 7 songs ago. It also has a female background vocal in this song. Like during the bridge, there's some female doing some chanting behind Sakis, who's just repeating the song title. That sounds plain, but I actually really like that part. I thought the bridge on this song was really strong. So overall, it's the strongest song, but to me, it still is not really that strong of a song overall. Like on this album, it stands out, but I don't think it's not playlist worthy for me or anything like that. So needless to say, I had a pretty rough week with this and overall was just kind of disappointed, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think what especially makes Pixlox Docs interesting is that it continues the melodic concept that The Apostate had.
Yeah.
I think that alone is pretty cool, and that was something to look forward to on the album, because it's like, wow, they do something interesting here. And that's kind of the name of the game with this album, is that how much of it is really that interesting. So I liked The Apostate when I first heard it. I'm like, yeah, this is cool, this is what I'm talking about. And early on this week, I was thinking to myself, like, wow, this album really feels kind of larger than life. I kind of like that. But then it didn't take much longer for me to start feeling like a lot of the songs started to sound like they blended together. And it was similar. So I counted beats per minute and all the tempos, and they were all ranging between like the 116 to like 125-ish range. A lot of them fell into that range, and it was too similar. I averaged it out at 116 BPM.
Yeah.
The Farewell is the slowest one at 76, so that one's noticeably different, and I actually started to like that song a lot more, not only because of that, but I liked the B section and the bridge with a pretty cool guitar line going, and that brings me to another thing about this album, is that I feel like it needs a bit more of a guitar presence.
Yes.
Throughout the week, just to give myself a bit of a reference point, I listened to Ealo, and that album was awesome. And I think one of the biggest things I noticed about that album that made it awesome was the heavy presence of the guitar.
Yeah.
There were a lot of cool licks, riffs, ideas, and stuff that stood out on that album that this one does not have. Yeah. And I feel like with more stuff like that, like I said about The Farewell, the album would benefit a lot from that. Yeah, The Apostate, it's funny, I listened to a little bit of The Heretics, which was the last record that we reviewed from this band, and I heard Dies Irae, and it sounds almost the same as The Apostate. I'm like, wait a minute, I heard this already, what?
Yeah, they actually have like a bunch of songs in their catalog that kind of just sound like that.
Yeah.
The same kind of rhythmic drive to them. And it's kind of just something they do.
Yeah,
But,
that being said, I do think at least the connection between Apostate and Pixlax Docs is really cool. The fact that they did that is something that stands out, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That they revisit something like that. I think that's interesting. Like Father, Like Son actually grew on me throughout the week. At first when we checked it out, you know, in the reaction we're like, but the guitar riff stands out enough to me, and I feel like it's faster enough than The Apostate to give the pacing shift, but I feel like although a lot of the songs are a very similar tempo on this record, the way they try to change the pacing is through its performance. So if you're gonna, you know, play something with a similar pacing but play it at like a halftime feel, it's gonna feel different even if it's the same tempo, or if you're gonna play it in a triple time feel, or if you're gonna put a lot more notes in there.
That's right.
You know, there's ways to have similar tempos and make that work. I don't know if I really don't think it worked enough on this album, but that is what they did to make the pacing the way it was. And I remember I complimented the pacing last week, and over the week I understood that is how it worked. That's how they made that work. But at the same time, a lot of the songs kind of give you the same vibe going on. And like the faster songs are kind of like the same kind of fast, and the slower songs are like the same kind of slow. So is basically the pacing is just bouncing back and forth between those and not really creating as dynamic of a feel that they could have. But I feel like it's kind of a come and go album, but it's not something that I would actively disliked when I put it on. I thought to myself, like, I could throw this on and be like, yeah, this is fine, this is neat. There might be a thing or two in here that I think is pretty cool, but overall, it wasn't anything that super duper stood out. And I feel like Rotting Christ, so we've talked about bands that, you know, keep things kind of similar with what they do. They don't really experiment, they don't need to, they just sound like what they need to sound like, and that's it, right? And that can be a good thing and a bad thing. Obviously, in some cases, they can sound tired, it can sound like, why does this album exist? It's the same as before, and that kind of thing. Sometimes the band experiments. They try something completely different. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. Some people say, oh, what the heck is this? I don't know what they're doing anymore. Or wow, they really, you know, they really struck a home run with this. Like, great creativity. But I think an album like this is a really good sign for Rotting Christ to experiment. I think they've been around for so long, they've done so many records, they've captured a sound. I think going forward, it would be for the best if this band really tried something different. Like
Yeah.
really different, like really something that you'd listen to and be like, wow, these guys are really cooking up something interesting. Because this album kind of feels a bit more phoned in. Like, here, let's just kind of, here it is.
Phoned in's a good way to put it, I think.
So I feel like I'd like to, from the next time these guys drop a record, I'd really like to see something like really different, vastly different. Something that gets us questioning like, wow, these guys are really trying something here, because I feel like creatively that will refresh them.
You're not wrong. That's definitely something that could ignite a spark, right? A spark that seems to have been dead for the last few weeks. I think Rituals was the last good Rotting Christ album. Heretics was like, man, this was a little less than man. But yeah, trying something like crazy new would definitely ignite a spark. For me though, and I think I mentioned this last week, I think Sakis and Themis have reached a creative peak at some point in their career, and they have not been able to really expand past that. And we're talking about a lot of these ideas that are good on this album, and they're just ideas that are rehashed from older albums, just not as well done, right? And you mentioned something that I totally agree with, and that's, we listened to Aiello, and that the guitar presence on that album was so much better because there was a lot of good ideas in there, a lot of cool things going on, and really made it stand out. This doesn't have that, but why? What's the problem? Well, it's because that creative spark isn't there, right? Do they need to really try new things and experiment with new things? Yeah, they could, or they could just do the same thing they were doing before and just incorporate more cool ideas into the music and have it spark that way. So there's different ways they can do it, but what they did here, I don't think quite worked. So, I think I'm ready to rate it.
Yeah, I'm ready as well.
So yeah, with all that being said, I'm listening to this album through the week and I didn't hate it. I think it's fine. I'm putting it on. I'm like, okay, this is okay, this is okay. But the biggest takeaway for me is that there's a lot of other Rotting Christ I'd much rather be listening to. So why am I ever going to put this on? Right?
That's fair.
It's their own discography, their own work defeats this. Like, this just seems like pointless to me because so much of their other stuff is so much better. So why would I ever put this on?
Yeah.
With that said, there's a couple good riffs. It is what it is. My score is going to be a 4.
All right. Well, in my case, I feel like pretty similar opinion to Vile in the sense that they've done a lot better. There is some cool stuff in here, but I feel like this band is capable of much better because we've seen that. And, I said next album should be a big experimentation, or at least I would like to see that. Even if that means they kind of get the creative juices flowing, because you can even see a next album being an experiment, and then after that they come back to their roots with a refreshed mind.
Yeah.
Because it kind of feels like they're spinning the wheels a little bit at this point. It's not a terrible album. Felt kind of come and go, and if I want to listen to more Rotting Christ, I don't think I would choose this album. So for me, it's gonna get a 5.
So yeah, 5 from TV Fish and a 4 from me, but that's it for our review of Pro Christou from Rotting Christ. So leave your thoughts down below and let us know what you guys think of this album after a week of listening to it. If you agree with our ratings or not, sound off down below. Hit that subscribe button if you guys are new to the channel. I'm Vile Self.
I'm TV Fish.
I'll see you guys in the next one.